Howard called to come and present on the problem with fentanyl. And I told Howard that I'm not an expert on fentanyl, but I am an expert on drug crisis in our backyard. Me and my husband and Carolyn Christensen started our organization in June of 2012. May 29, 2012, I lost my oldest son to a heroin overdose. We have 4 boys, and Justin is the one in blue shirt, and he didn't start with opiates. He started with pot. Actually started with nicotine at 15 years old. And then at 16, we found him smoking pot. And he graduated with high school with very little and no problems. He went to Marist College, and his use escalated. Many of these kids go to college, and that's where their use escalates. They start in high school, maybe with softer drugs, and they get into college, and now they're surrounded by people that they don't know. They grow up in our sleepy little town, and they go off to college, and they are scared, okay? And so the transition from high school to college needs to be a little better than, at least it was when my son was in high school. After he finished with college, he started using oxycodone, Percocet. It was flooding the streets at that time, and my husband will talk to that, to the beginning of this opiate epidemic. At 25 years old, he started using heroin, and from 25 to 29, he fought the battle of his life, and he lost. And we started drug crisis in our backyard in order to bring awareness of the rampant use of heroin and opiates in our community. We didn't know at that time that it was going to get worse. But when you see some of the charts up there, you are not able to believe what happened since 2012 to 2021. And I'm sure 2022 is going to be a lot worse. Carol Christensen could not be here tonight. Carolyn, who started this organization, was right after she lost her son, Eric, who was 28 years old, and he was a narcotics detective in New York City. She had no idea that he was struggling with Oxycontin. His doctor was prescribing Oxycontin, which started with for a back problem, and he got addicted to it, as so many others have. I'm sure there's people in this audience who have lost their children. I know there are, because my friend Nancy's here, lost their children because of this opiate epidemic, whether it be heroin or fentanyl. You know what? It doesn't matter, because once they're gone, they are gone, and they're gone for good, and you're never going to see them. So we need to get this information out. This is sounding the alarm, and the schools need to hear it. The parents need to, because it's of utmost importance that people understand that anyone can get addicted. It doesn't matter if you live in North State. It doesn't matter where you live. We have a beautiful family. We were married for 40 years. We had 4 beautiful children. We had a golden retriever, and our son got addicted to drugs, and he could not stop. So we started the organization to work with families that are struggling with addiction. We do that still 10 years later. We have a support group. We run 2 a week. Lillian runs one. I run one. We had 30 people on our support group last night. These are people that are not afraid to come out and talk. And that's what you need to do. Come out and talk. So I'm going to leave you with one thing. When you leave here tonight, go tell this story to 4 other people that kids are dying. And if they're not dying, they are living in hell. And it is not something they're bringing upon themselves. It really isn't, because I saw it happen with my own eyes. So with that, we're going to bring it back to the beginning of when this opiate epidemic started.
Okay, so we're going to show you some graphs just to give you some framework as to the genesis of this epidemic. So you're going to look at the chart up right now is consumption of oxycodone, and I'm sorry that the chart is not clear, but it's from a distance. But we're going back way back, and we're only going to 06. But you'll see here in 1996, something dramatic has happened. This is a dramatic trajectory change in our country. What happened in 1996 was that Purdue Pharma decided to start marketing oxycodone. They started to market it to doctors. And the way they did it was they told doctors that pain was unacceptable at any level, and that they should use this miracle drug, oxycodone. It's not a thing. And they went ahead and they flooded the market, and every doctor during the time period from 1996 to a few years thereafter forward, doctors were writing scripts for oxycodone like it was going out of style. You come in, you had a toothache. You come in, you had a foot-ache, whatever it was, you got this. And that changed our country, and it changed our thinking about pain, and it was the genesis of this epidemic. Purdue Pharma lied about the data. They falsified information, they manipulated information, and they got caught. In 2006, they paid a $600 million fine, and the 3 executives, including the general counsel, pleaded guilty to criminal charges. They didn't serve jail time, they paid another $34 million, and that was the end of the case. I will tell you that oxycodone, I think the average sales of oxycodone were $30 billion. They paid us $600 million. You do the math. So as we go forward, there actually was another settlement produced. So if you want to explain it, it's 22.
Yes.
But this was a big. But
$6
in
billion.
exchange for the $6 billion settlement, they received immunity.
Immunity. They received immunity for the $6 billion settlement, and that's for the whole country, and Westchester got a big portion of that, those funds, settlement funds, and all the counties in New York State. So New York State got a big chunk of it, and all the counties in New York State got a big chunk to work with. And I forgot exactly, I think it was 1.5 million that Westchester got from that settlement. So a lot of the pharmaceutical companies that were brought to task on this, Teva being another one, McKesson being another one, were fine. But you know what? Those people should be in jail. Okay, let's face it. They are dealers in white coats, and they should be in jail. But they're not.
They're not. They changed, like I said, they changed the culture. They got to the doctors, and that's pretty much how everything got started. So if we really go forward now, we look at what does that transpire into overdose death. These numbers are startling. Okay, they are startling numbers. Now this goes from 1999 to 2020. And you can see that right after this launch I just talked about, it starts to really escalate. But look where it's going today. And of course, the epidemic, the pandemic, really, really skyrocketed. But I mean, you're talking about increases of 20,000 people in a year. And how does it look for 21? 107, 662 deaths. 75% of these deaths on this chart are opiate related. They're caused by opiates. 75%. And you can see, I don't know why, but males are affected far more than women, actually more so recently. But in any event, the numbers are startling. And as we look at the breakdown of what's actually being consumed, you see benzodiazepine, antidepressants towards the bottom. Not much of an effect here, but still there. Now you see the heroin line, which is this yellow line, starts to really get a trajectory around 2010, 2011. Right now it's kind of percolating over here, but prescriptions here are on the rise. That's because of all that marketing, right? So what happens is prescriptions on the rise. Now they start to level off, go down. What's happening? Heroin is going up. Prescriptions are leveling, heroin is rising. So now around 2013, 2014, heroin's really coming into its own. Look at what happens in 2015. Fentanyl, this one, takes over everything. It skyrockets like you have, just unbelievable, okay? Through everything, everyone that's really, a lot of people converting over from heroin, but there's two sources of consumption in that fentanyl number to be aware of. Very important to understand. People are knowingly using fentanyl and going out and getting it because of how strong it is, the desire. The second use, which I think is more prevalent, are people that are taking fentanyl and don't know they're taking it. That is a big problem. Most of the street drugs, bootleg pills, anything you buy on the street, which is generally cheaper and easy to get, you don't need a script. That's where a lot of people that are used to getting it. It's almost all got fentanyl in it in some way because it's cheap and there's a lot of it and the pushers can put it in pills, and they have really potent pills that doesn't cost a lot. Some people may die, some people may not. They're not concerned about that. So really, we were looking at some skyrocketing numbers. Fentanyl's on the rise. This is actually from 2020, so that's a pretty accurate figure. And from there, so I move to.
Okay, so opiates are a class of drug that includes illegal drug heroin. Synthetic opiates such as fentanyl and particularly available by prescription. So opiates really are opiates. Heroin comes from the poppy plant. If you know that, and it's really funny because we talked to kids too before 2020. Anyway, we did, and I said we were talking about marijuana. The kid says to me, "Well, it's a plant. It's natural." Well, opium is a plant too, right? So that's where heroin comes from. And then all the semi-synthetic drugs, like, and I have this list here so you know what they are, because people don't always know what they are. Oxycodone, Percocet and Oxycontin are the brand names. Hydrocodone is Vicodin. Codeine, if you have a bad cough, like a lot of people, you know, with COVID had bad coughs, doctors were prescribing codeine. My girlfriend got codeine. She had a bad cough, she needed it, but you know, the kids would drink it because it'll get you high. Morphine, you know what that is, and there are others. What I want to say about this, what's really important that you should know is they don't start with these drugs. They start with pot, and they start with vape. And one of the families that I am working with, vaping is out of control, okay? It is, everybody's using it. Lillian and I did a presentation in probably 2019 to middle schoolers, 8th and 9th, 7th and 8th grades. We asked about 500 kids in the auditorium. How many of you know someone that is vaping? Everybody raised their hand. They're all vaping. We've got a serious problem in this country because the THC is so potent. I'm working with a family member whose son had to be put in the psychiatric ward from college this weekend because they're smoking this THC that is so dangerous. So it doesn't start with this, it starts with other gateway drugs, alcohol, nicotine, and marijuana. And they work their way, not all of them, but you don't know who's gonna have the target on it.
I have a question.
Yes.
So opioids are from the synthetic.
Yes,
Opioids.
opioids
And the opiates
are natural.
natural. Okay.
Right, exactly, yep. They kind of pull them all together now, but really the opioids are synthetic or semi-synthetic drugs. So this is what brought you here tonight. I'm sure many of you saw this on television. There was an article about these Skittles being, you know, these are fentanyl pills being brought over. There was a narcotics. I mean, they're going to talk about the narcotics. Let them talk about it. They'll talk about this picture, I'm sure. So let them do it. But we do have a little blurb from the DEA.
Connected to Bluetooth.
Sorry, guys. So this is a fentanyl, this is DEA, they have a fentanyl awareness site, it's coming through again, okay? So you see, actually, they have a face of the fentanyl exhibit, they're faces of fentanyl wall at Army Navy Drive in Arlington. Just as a, you know, their DEA has recognized this to be a significant crisis. I'm going to play this for you.
At record rates. Many of them didn't know they were taking the deadliest drug our country has ever seen. They didn't know how drug traffickers mix fentanyl in cocaine, in heroin, and in methamphetamine. They didn't know that the prescription pill they bought from a dealer on social media was fake and actually contained fentanyl. And they didn't know that just one pill can kill. But we at the DEA know that this is happening. And now you do too. Now you can help us to save lives. Only take prescription pills that are prescribed to you personally and that come from the pharmacy. And on this first ever National Fentanyl Awareness Day, please be sure to talk with your friends and your family about the dangers of this deadly substance. Together, we can save lives. Thank you.
Okay, so this is a comparison of fentanyl and heroin. So that much heroin can kill someone depending on their tolerance level. If they've just come out of jail or they just got out of rehab and they haven't used and they go back out and use, their tolerance is very low and they can overdose on a small amount. Look at the amount of fentanyl that it takes someone to overdose on. It is just such a small amount.
These are equal. Now, potency on these. So you get it right. If that's not clear, look at this. This is a lethal amount of fentanyl. Look at that. Now you know why so many people are dying. It's such a small amount. It's like, I know you could probably talk about it. Police officers have said that some officers are passing out and going into overdose from handling it on drug tests. That's how potent it is.
So what do we do as a community? What do we do? How do we help our young adults and our kids? How do we help them? And Lillian and I have done a lot of training, a lot of workshops with younger kids, high school and middle school kids and families. We talk to families most of the time. And what's important, in order to protect them from the risk factors, which are many, involvement in family activities, involvement in after-school activities, involvement in faith-based activities, and a strong family connection. Parents make a difference, believe it or not. As much as they hate us when they're teenagers, we still make a difference. Academic competence is important for them to achieve in school. Whatever it takes to help them achieve in school will help them to have a better outcome. The risk factors are family history, okay? You don't have to be guilty about it. Just tell your kids about it, that you have a family history. We both had family histories of alcoholism in our family. So our kids having, a problem, we didn't know that at the time, but we were passing these, besides passing down our good looks, we were passing down our propensity for addiction. So that's one. Mental health issues is another. A lot of these kids have anxiety now. They're scared, and I don't blame them. Peer involvement. Who are their friends? Know who their friends are. It's really important that you stay in touch, even after they drive at 16 years old. That's a really big step for them. And parents kind of let go of it because they don't have to drive them here and there and everywhere. So now they're kind of giving them free reign. And so it's important to stay, even though they're driving on their own, stay in close contact with them because they're at an age there where they can start using, 16 years old, 16, 17. And then it's hard to come back from that.
That we've seen research, another really strong factor in young people's propensity to use or pick up is what they perceive their parents' values towards drinking and drug use. Believe it or not, they adopt those views. So if they think their parents are okay with smoking pot because they see them smoking pot, they're more likely to smoke themselves. So I think you don't realize it. I mean, you learn when you're growing up that your children watch what you do and they do it too. It's even more important in terms of your attitude towards drug use and drinking. So you need to communicate these values to your kids and let them know what you think and what you know is acceptable.
So we just put a couple of things up here as a community. We know that these gentlemen are going to speak next, so we kind of want, we thought you might talk a little bit about problem solving for better outcomes in drug treatment. So parents and parent monthly meetings would be an idea, something that you might want to bring forth and say, maybe we should do this in the schools. We should have parents come and talk together to each other about what's happening. How about engaging, which you're doing now, school and the civic meetings. Have parents pledge to report to other parents. So that could happen in that group meeting with parents, tell them to report, you know, I know your kid is using something, I'm just telling you this because it could be a problem down the road, and not to take offense at that. Turn around and say, you don't know what you're talking about, because that can happen. So, and Narcan training, which you do so much of, and hope you'll take advantage of the fact that we're receiving that. And then I'm sure there's more, but that's something for you guys to come up with your own. These are some of the things that we do as an organization. We do family navigating, we help families find resources. We do recovery coaching for family members. We present that civic organization. We do our Spotlight Family Support Group and our Narcan training. And we used to show up at community health fairs, but since COVID, we really haven't. So thank you for being here. The gentlemen are going to speak now, and I'm sure that they can answer questions about, you know, this community, what's happening. And so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Would you like to get going?
So everybody's doing, get my name is Jason Moore, I'm investigator with the state police on the shoulders right here. I'm also classified as what's called a drug recognition expert with the state of New York. It's a international organization where I am special trained in detections of investigations of drugs, whether it's from overdoses or from people operating motor vehicles or so on and so forth like that. Investigator Stephen Smoke is here with me as well. He's from what we call our VG-Man group. That's our Violent Gangs Narcotics Enforcement Task Force team. He specializes a lot more in, excuse me, the actual handling drugs and getting the drugs off our streets. So he'll be able to answer a lot of questions.
It comes in many forms.
So again, it was first developed back in the 50s as an anesthetic, used in the 60s as intravenous anesthetic for surgery and pain relief. So permanently used as a substitute anesthesia for small localized surgeries and so on like that. It was approved by the FDA in '68 as an analgesic or a pain reliever. There is 7 classifications of drugs. Fentanyl actually falls over what's called a narcotic analgesic, which is a pain reliever of sorts. Fentanyl, like Susan touched on, is 100 times more potent than morphine, approximately 50 to 80% more potent than heroin. So obviously, again, like they were touching on earlier, it is a strong synthetic. It is listed in the New York State Public Health Law, Section 3306, as a controlled substance. It's a Schedule II narcotic on our end, so it is chargeable under New York State penal law and is charged as such. Types of fentanyl, you have pharmaceutical fentanyl to start, which is prescribed by doctors to treat severe pain, especially after surgery and for advanced stage cancer. And that's what it was originally developed for, before it started hitting the street. You then have illicitly manufactured fentanyl, which again is distributed through illegal drug markets for heroin-like effect that Susan touched on earlier. So it does give you that same effect of heroin, or oxys, roxys, perks, as they're commonly known on the street, Percocets, oxycodone, oxycontin, roxicodone, and all their derivatives. Manufactured by multiple companies, as Susan touched on earlier as well. And it comes in multiple forms for pharmaceutical purposes. Oral transmucosal lozenges or lollipops, effervescent buccal tablets or pills, sublingual tablets, sublingual sprays, nasal sprays, and transdermal patches. These are just some of what they look like. Your illicit can come in multiple forms, like Steve was talking about earlier. It can come in pill, powder, liquid, any combination of such. It can be disguised in pills like Susan said as well. It can be mixed with other compounds and extracted later by dealers. It can go in all sorts of forms. These are just a couple of them. As I showed earlier, you have your lethal dose of fentanyl down in the corner. The big problem, like we had a picture of earlier, is what's called rainbow fentanyl, which has been in the streets a lot more. And Steve can talk about it a little bit more. It's not so much that dealers are marketing towards kids, even though they aren't, but they're using this type of pill press or this type of disguise to hide what they're actually doing. So yes, they are packaging in Skittles containers, Nerf containers, all sorts of items like that, so they can hide them from, obviously, law enforcement officials to get them distributed where they want them to go. They also have, as you can see down in the corner, this is actually a counterfeit oxycodone pill. It's got the same stamps and markings as the FDA-approved sperm oxycodone, but it's actually a pure fentanyl pill. So they're disguising along those lines as well. They give you prescription containers with people's names on them, stating that they're oxycodone. So if we go to look them up in our pill finder, it'll actually come up that that is oxycodone, and unless we're able to test it on site, we have no idea that it's fentanyl. They're actually fentanyl. Forms of ingestion, obviously smoking, snorting, injecting, juicing. Juicing is always a big one for this category. So those transdermal patches, like I spoke about before, they're actually a patch, almost like a Nicorette patch. You kind of stick them on your arm. They're prescribed by a doctor. They slow release the fentanyl into your system for late-stage cancer patients, or so on and so forth. Users who get their hands on those patches, a lot of times what they do is called juicing. They'll either cut them open and squeeze the fentanyl out of it, and either later on inject it or make it in some other form to use it, or they'll actually take the patch itself, cut it open, and they'll chew on it, or juice it. So they'll put the whole patch right in their mouth, they'll chew on it, it'll slow release the fentanyl into their system, and that's how it's called. This is kind of just a little chart. I know it's a little hard to read, but as Steve and I were touching on before again, most of your fentanyl or fentanyl precursors right now are getting made over in China. China back in 2017, the Chinese government really restricted the production of their fentanyl on sales because the worldwide community was getting angry that so much fentanyl was getting pumped into the system from them. So with that being said, India took over a large production of the fentanyl in the world at this time as well. So between the two countries, most of your fentanyl is coming out of either China or India from their labs, subsequently getting shipped across the pond, for lack of better terms, to Mexico, Canada, directly to the United States. From there, it's getting either made into other forms such as pills, liquids, further developed, hidden in other drugs, and then it's getting brought across our borders from both the north and the south for distribution. Okay.
I have a question. How did they get it? Boats?
Sure, smuggling. Again, Steve deals directly with that, but from what I know, a large part of our problem is also the U.S. Post Office. You can buy anything and ship it through the U.S. mail nowadays, black market sales, Amazon, time to check packages, and a lot of it comes right to your doorstep.
We're responsible for 50% of the outside. Mr.
In North Salem? Yeah. Kind of just like my wife too. My wife don't say every day I come home from work, there's a new box.
That was a long COVID.
So again, excuse me, China remains the primary source of fentanyl and fentanyl-related substances trafficked through international mail, as well as the main source for all fentanyl-related substances trafficked in the United States. A seizure of fentanyl from China, less than 1 kilogram in weight, and often tests above 90% concentration of pure fentanyl. So that means the fentanyl that we were describing before, Susan touched on as well, that's 50 to 100 times more potent in heroin or morphine. They're sending us kilograms, however they're doing it, whether it's legally or illegally. Kilograms are coming in, and that's 90% of concentrated pure fentanyl. All right. Again, like I just touched on, new sanctions were brought about by the Chinese government to limit that. Mexican transnational criminal organizations, or TCOs, as I'll refer to later on, are producing increased quantities of fentanyl due to the cutback by the Chinese government. Mexican TCOs are increasingly producing wholesale quantities of illicit fentanyl pills and smuggling them into the United States. As of 2018, due to China's new restrictions, TCOs have moved the production of fentanyl and fentanyl precursors to India, which is seen in the rise of TCOs and smuggling. Okay, touched on earlier. Fentanyl packaging, and again, Steve can touch on this more. He deals more on this end than I do. These are kind of just some pictures I have from work. Again, they are shipping it around as candy package, the rainbow fentanyl. Again, that's not so much to market directly towards kids, even though they are, but more so to evade individuals like Steve. Wholesale packaging, kilogram weight, and then this is kind of your street packaging, for lack of better terms. But that's the non-movers, is what we call them. They're usually labeled or stamped with the dealer's trademark on it, so the individual who's using knows what trademark is getting, and you can go back to that same individual for that same time most of the time. Fentanyl is real cheap right because there's a lot of it. And it's made by pharmaceutical companies that get your hands on it earlier, like Steve just touched on. You can get a kilogram of fentanyl, pure fentanyl for $23,000. You can make anywhere from 100 to 150 on that, depending on how big you cut. So cutting agent, they'll mix the fentanyl with heroin, which got a little bit more expensive than fentanyl, so people started going with fentanyl. So they'll cut it with heroin, they'll cut it with baking soda, they'll cut it with baby powder, they'll expand the product, make a little bit more money on it, and that's how they kind of do it. Like Steve was touching on, you'll have higher potency stuff, you'll have lesser potency stuff. You have people who have a higher tolerance, just kind of like alcohol. Fentanyl is the same thing. If you've used fentanyl for years and years and years and years, you build a higher tolerance, you got to do a full bundle over 10 bags, 10 envelopes to get your high. If it's your first time doing it, you need a needle's worth. You know what I mean? So it just depends, and it depends on how much they're making it for. And again, like we were talking about before, it's cyclical. You've gone through epidemics with cocaine, with heroin, with morphine, with all sorts of different drugs. Right now, the drug of choice is fentanyl, and it's big. It's flooding the market, and like Steve was saying, it's pretty cheap to make, pretty easy to get into the country, pretty easy to make in the country, so it's easy to get out there. So that's kind of why we're having this issue right now. Yes, ma'am.
I heard an addict give his testimony, and he said that his first hit was so amazing. He spent the next 20 years trying to get the first hit.
Yep. So it's commonly referred to,
And he never did.
Yeah, no, they never will. Being a drug recognition expert, like I said, I get called all over the county. There's actually only 6 of us in Westchester County that are classified as a drug recognition expert. So I've worked with Yonkers PD, State Police, every PD you can probably imagine I've worked with. I've dealt with a lot of users and a lot of addicts, and it's what they call either riding a dragon or riding a light. You kind of get that first high from it, it puts you through the roof, it gives you that feeling of euphoria, and they're always chasing. They're just chasing that tail down the road. They're never going to get back to it, and they're never going to find it again, but they always keep buying and buying and using it, trying to get it. And they'd be probably better off to touch on that than I am. I'm not an addict counselor, and I haven't talked to them along those lines like that, but they're always chasing that high. They're always looking for a better life.
Is there a certain amount of fentanyl that's actually manufactured for the use of legal drugs that's stolen or taken and used to produce the illicit version, so to speak? Does that happen?
You're saying stolen how, what aspect?
I'm not sure. I mean, if it's produced in India or China originally for pharmaceuticals, right? Is a certain portion of that somehow obtained by illegal means that they repurposed?
So I don't know if any statistic that show if what percentage is stolen or smuggled or taken from the legal manufacturer. I can't answer that question because that's I got far to scale.
Okay. So just signs of impairment, again, for local community people, so you can watch out for your kids. It does kind of, the biggest one I like to relay to people, it does closely resemble like you're intoxicated on alcohol. Okay, so narcotic analgesic, whether it's oxys, roxys, methadone, morphine, anything like that, it will resemble an intoxicated-like state. It'll be slow, droopy pupils, slurred speech, trouble balancing, so on and so forth. Strictly related to fentanyl, you're going to have that feeling of euphoria, that pain relief, like they were touching on before. A lot of times, back when the epidemic really started, Oxycontin really started getting pushed, it was a pain relief medicine. So it was pushed out to people, especially construction workers, anybody in major accidents, stuff like that, relieve their pain, back pain, knee pain, shoulder pain, all that kind of stuff. You'll see drowsy or sleepiness-like state, nausea or vomiting, constipated or diarrhea. It's called opioid-induced constipation, where if you're talking to somebody and they are expressing feelings like that, a lot of times it can be opioid-induced. Weakness or fatigue, confusion, slurred speech, problems with balance, slow pulse or lower blood pressure, constricted pupils, and like I said, closely resembles an intoxicated-like behavior. We'll get a lot of questions a lot of times roadside when we're dealing with people like this, where it's actually they think their pupils should be large. Narcotic analgesic actually restricts the pupil. So if you see somebody with those pinpoint pupils, a lot of people refer to cocaine when it's actually not. It's more of a narcotic analgesic. If you have a very tight, small, constricted pupil, like if you're standing outside and you're talking to somebody, your pupils should be huge, especially at this time of night. If they're really tight and small and closed, that's going to be your narcotic. That's going to be your fentanyl, methadone, along those lines.
By the way, those were the grandparents
Yes.
of that one.
Yep. So this is the signs of overdose, obviously. If you come up on somebody, they are unconscious or unresponsive, more so than they are on alcohol. Slow to stop breathing, snoring or gurgling sound. I believe there's an EMT in the back that may be able to touch on that a little bit more than I can. Cold and clammy skin, discolored lips and fingernails. Discolored lips and fingernails, you're really going to be coming up on overdose. That's going to be showing that they've been going for a couple minutes at that. Withdrawal symptoms to look out for: kids, friends, families, neighbors, communities, whatever. You got muscle ache and pains, bone aches and pains, diarrhea, vomiting, cold flashes or chills, involuntary or uncontrollable leg movements, cravings, insomnia, loss of appetite, fatigue and weakness, increased blood pressure, increased heart rate, and mood swings, most of all. Everybody's seen in the movies that we touched on earlier. A lot of times when people are going through withdrawal symptoms, they get that itchy, clammy, kind of jittery, can't stop moving, grinding the teeth, bruxism, all that kind of stuff. That's kind of what you're looking for locally. You know what I mean? Like I said, friends, families, kids, neighbors. If you're starting to see these signs and symptoms, you're probably going to want to get them to a doctor. You're probably going to want to get them some help. Naloxone, and Lily will touch on that a little bit more. Every state police car is issued 2. So we have 2 Narcan kits in every state police car. EMTs carry their own Narcan, and also have intravenous form of Narcan they can use directly into the vein for quicker effect. But yeah, I don't want to steal Lloyd's there, so if you want to jump in on this one, or you want to wait.
Just that it comes like this in a box. And there are 2 of these, and like I said, in the box. Just like nasal spray. Yeah. Yes, I have nasal spray. It's easier to use, and we'll go through how do you use it. And it does save people's lives. So I'm glad you're here, and I hope as many of you stay to get the information and a free.
I have personally used Narcan. I'm sure Investigator Smoke has personally used Narcan as well. It does work. And not to contradict Lillian, but it also does not work at times too. Depends on how long you're waiting and how long you're getting it in the system. So it comes in a 4 milligram nasal spray. To knock the naloxone access flow out. It is available for purchase over the counter by a pharmacist in all 50 states. So you can purchase your own if you want. You don't need to. It works, and Lillian will touch on this later too. Reverse by attachment to the opioid receptors in the brain, and reverses and blocks the effects of the opioids. It doesn't hurt anybody who is not overdosing from a narcotic analgesic. Everybody's always worried that if they use it, they spray it up somebody's nose, that they're going to hurt them if they don't need it. It has no effect on anybody if they're not overdosing on a narcotic analgesic. So you don't have to worry about hurting anybody with it. You're safe and sorry with it. It'll only help them, it can't hurt. Law enforcement agencies that are working on this crisis, obviously, New York State Police, Customs and Border Protection, U.S. Border Patrol, Drug Enforcement Agency or DEA, the FBI, all local agencies, and multiple joint agencies. So we do have dedicated task force put together for the apprehension of illegal drug sales. We have the Drug Enforcement Task Force, which is down in New York City, which is New York State Police, DEA, ATF, the FBI, that we all work together on doing the same thing. Again, Investigator Smokey's in our gangs and narcotics enforcement task force team, and they're strictly dedicated 24/7 to working that. So it's pretty much what we got straight on fentanyl.
Question 4, if I understood it. We talked about how many people have died, and was your question how many people might be out there actively using? Okay, so for OASIS, which is the Office of Addiction Services and Supports, who funds and credentials all the treatment programs in New York State, is 1,700. There are 680,000 people being treated for substance use disorder a year in New York State.
600,000.
680,000 individuals per year go through 1,700 treatment programs.
I lost my son in July of 2019. He was purchasing, and anybody in North Salem in this area. It used to be Yonkers, it used to be Danbury, but the drug hub seems to be up in Waterbury, Connecticut, which is where my son's dealer was, which he bought cocaine, it had fentanyl in it, and that's what killed him. Talking about the dealer, I had my son's phone with the dealer's phone number, text messages, everything on it, gave it to the police. And I just arrested with another drug charge. But he hasn't shown up for any of his court appearances in Waterbury. So it takes years to write. But if you try to build a case.
And that's the other issue with it. That thing is failed. We come apart with Tona, the home night. The last month, I'd say we probably had about, I think we've had 11 or 15 overdoses. I think 8 or 9 of those were linked to fentanyl, and we do that for every case we have as well. As long as we have authorization from the family, we can take the phone. We can use the phone, investigator smoke, one of his counterparts will come down with us. We'll actually scrub their phone clean. We'll go through, look for any dealer tags, any correspondence between the deceased and the dealer, and we can kind of track it down in that way as well. So we are using that to our advantage as well. As long as the families are cooperative with us and they'll let us take the phone, we can always go through the phone. Everybody has their whole life on their phone nowadays. So you can go through the phone and we can always, that's what we've been doing recently. We have had a decent ratio of overdoses here within the last year or so from fentanyl, and it's still staying steady right now, unfortunately. Hopefully we'll start seeing a decline. A lot of the drugs, everybody kind of thinks that drugs are getting smuggled over the border on the back of donkeys or people carrying them backpacks. It's not a lot of times the way it is. Like I said, the mail right now is one of the biggest drug cartels in the world. Again, the U.S. Postal Office isn't legally allowed to search every package that's coming into the country. Amazon can ship worldwide. Their packages aren't getting shipped or tracked or detained, for lack of better terms. So the mail is a big issue we're having right now. Investigators will probably touch on that, but you could probably go online right now and order up 3 or 4 kilograms of fentanyl from Mexico and have it shipped to your house in an Amazon box. You know what I mean? That's kind of what we're fighting right now. You know, so it's not necessarily that just flooding over the border from the north or the south. Today is, don't get me wrong, there are stuff coming in from the borders. Always has been, always will be, and we've been trying to counteract that for years. But the big issue right now is everything getting shipped across the mail.
So don't they have dog sniffing?
So yes, we do have drug sniffing dogs. However,
Seems
the
like
way it works, and this is just a federal legal process, if you search one package, you have to search all packages. So if you have a drug sniffing dog that searches one, you have to search every package that's in the facility that day. It would shut down the United States mail for months.
So the dog can't tell which package it's coming from?
Sure, it can, but if he sniffs one, he has to sniff all 200,000 packages that are in the post office. So you can't just, the way it works is you can't just single out one package and say, we want to search that one. Or we want to search that one today, or we want to search this one today, unless,
All it takes is one package.
sure,
I mean,
yeah. But again, it just,
you know, if you keep catching one and one and one and one.
sure. So the way it usually works, and this is where investigator Smoke comes into play, is they'll make their case and they'll find how they're shipping and so on and so forth, and then they'll do the legal process to get a dog to go in there and dump the package or something. You know what I mean? But it's, like I said, it's not as easy as just saying, hey, pup, go find me the drugs in the post office. Legally, you can't just pick out one package from the distribution center to search. Unless you're working a case on that package itself. So you can't just take a dog and, like I said, say you go to the Amazon distribution package center. You can't just take a dog and have them just search this one today or search that one tomorrow. It's against your constitutional rights. It's your right of privacy. You know what I mean? So you can't just. Can't you put them in there for an hour?
Yeah.
No,
Can't just walk around.
unfortunately, no.
Well, they
It's
do
just
at
like
the
roadside.
airport.
The airport's different. That's TSA. That's a whole nother ballgame. And they're strictly looking for bonds.
Let's do something.
Someone asked about the length of the high. And there's a new drug out there called xylazine. People are taking the xylazine with their heroin or fentanyl, whatever it may be, to extend the high. The main trouble is this blocks the effects of Narcan. So people are OD, they're getting 2 or 3 years of Narcan and it's having no effect. You mentioned the candy wrappers. In the city just last month, they recovered a shipment of fentanyl in a Lego box, Lego kits. Again, it's not a marketing strategy, it's a hiding strategy. But maybe what I really want to talk about is the demand, okay? And how to prevent the demand. That falls on parents. Back in 2017, I believe, the school district received a donation from Non-Star we're able to give every family in the school district this book, How to Raise a Drug-Free Kid. A fabulous, fabulous book to read. It's not a real happy read. I mean, it's not an easy read. It's not like reading Jaws or something like that. But it's filled with great information. So I just want to touch on it briefly, because it's getting late. I'll just run through a couple of the highlights. Basically, it's divided into 3 points: prevent it, recognize it, and confront it. As a parent with your children. Full disclosure: when I read this book, I had some hits, I had some misses. Okay, I'm by no means, I'm not trying to be hypocritical, say I was perfect and did this. But like I said, sometimes like, oh, I got that right. Other ones are like, oh, gee, well. Next life I'll do better. I did manage to graduate 2 kids in college, so I'll just chalk it up as a success. With this, parenting is the most important job in the world. You be trusted with children. It's your job not to be your child's friend, but to be your child's teacher. As I told my son, he's going off to college. You know, sometimes you're going to be involved in situations where something seems like a really great idea. Take a step back and think about it. Because being the guy who drank the most flaming shots, in the moment might seem like a good thing, but reality is not. And that's kind of how I send them off to school. Okay? Kids are under profession, the control. Has anyone ever heard of Chris Herron? Chris Herron, it was a ESPN 39 30. You can see it on. Chris Herron was a basketball star in the late 80s and early 90s in the Boston area. He was the best basketball player ever to play in his high school. He went to Boston College. He was drafted by the Nuggets and wound up on the Celtics. Imagine that. That'd be like someone from North Salem, being a star in North Salem, going to St. John's, and then winding up on the Knicks. Okay. But by the time he got to the Celtics, he was already hurt out. And his first game, they were winning from inside. Literally was down the street trying to get it. Okay. And why was that? He said when he was young, he started drinking because he couldn't be different. Everyone else was drinking, so he drank. This is what we want to prevent our children from experiencing. Because as it's been mentioned several times, okay, we don't know which kid is not going to be able to walk away from this. 10 kids will take drugs, will drink, whatever it might be. 8 or 9 will have no problems. Like, I'm stupid, I'm doing it again. 1 or 2 are stuck for life. We want to prevent it. Parenting entails installing value. The most important thing you can give your child is a moral compass. Child might say, you have no right to control my body, it's my body, I can do what I want to do. Okay? You have to explain to your child that it's your responsibility. It's like you're a teacher in art class. And all the kids have this valuable granite or whatever to chisel away. Right? With the proper instruction, they can produce a beautiful sculpture. If you let them do whatever they want, chances are we make a pile of dust. And that's what bringing up kids is like. I know that from personal experience. Okay? When I teach them to make healthy choices, do the right thing. And healthy choices is just not drugs, alcohol, smoking. It's what they do, who they hang with. Earl Lloyd was the first black player in the NBA. And he tells a story about how his mother would harass him about who he was hanging out with. And he would say, I'm not doing anything wrong. His mother just answered, if you're not in the picture, you can't be free. Who you're with, right? What you do, the choice you make are very, very important. I had a 9:30 coaching class. All my friends could start at 11 o'clock. I felt like a schmuck. Yeah. Except one night, I went home, got to the car, and got in the car accident. Right? They hit an L pillow on Jerome Avenue. One guy wound up with a concussion. Luckily, everyone survived. But I always kind of like begrudgingly knew my mother was right. Okay. On the flip side is you have to be aware of parental pressure, parental peer pressure. Because you have other parents saying, "Oh, why you like that? Well, don't be so. The kids are just having fun." Okay. It's a stick to your guns with your kids and with parents who will be against you. Children and teens crave boundaries. They crave limitations. They like the ability to say, "Oh, I can't do that before." Right? This way, they're not. It's not that they're not cool. They would love to do the drug. but I'll get in trouble, I'll be grounded, I'll lose my privileges. So they have an excuse to say no. Granted, being a parent is hard work. Work, you have other time commitments. Okay? But the end goal is more important. Find time to be involved. Okay? Joe Califano, who wrote this book, I said, if he had a magic wand, he said, what would he do with it? He said, he'd wave it over the parents. Heard something before, right? The facets of parental engagement, be there, get involved, open lines of communication, set a good example. Children watch what we do. I teach my daughter to drive. She was, wasn't a bad driver. You gotta sit there and let me go, no, I was and I told her not to do something. And she went off. My daughter did take criticism. But she was like, what do you mean? I said, just don't. You do it all the time. I didn't even give it a thought. And I thought, yeah, I do it all. And she's been watching her whole life. So that she picked it up, I really can't blame her. When will it increase? When there's changes in a child's life, going to middle school, a lot of pressure. Going into high school, a lot of pressure. Going off to college, again, wanting to fit in with the crowd, conform. These are all times in life that put pressure on a child where they're more susceptible to usually drugs. Right? Family trauma, divorce, a death in the family. These are all times you want to be vigilant, to watch out for what your child might do.
So I want to thank you for staying, and this is naloxone training saving lives, because you will be able to recognize an opiate overdose and then help someone. Next. So the training, we're going to talk about the New York State overdose law. We're going to talk about what's an overdose, who's at risk, how to recognize what is naloxone, how do you use it, and then report and refill. If I'm going too fast, let me know. The health law protects you. When saving someone's life by using Narcan, it does not mean that you're practicing a medical profession. You're saving someone's life, and this law protects you. So you don't have to worry that you can be sued, you have libel, nothing like that. This law protects you, and we'll talk about the Good Samaritan law also. If you have any questions, just jump in. So what's an overdose? See what happens? Your brain has receptors, just like that. And when the opiates sit on too many receptors, that causes an overdose. When it sits on you, you get high and you feel good. Too many causes the overdose. And what happens? The brain can't send messages to your lungs to breathe. Your veins fill up with opiates, so blood can't get through. Your heart rate slows down for it to stop. That's the overdose from the opiates. As you see, it sits on the receptors. Okay. So, risk factors for an overdose. Using alone. I know Susan and the officers talked about if someone's away in treatment, if someone puts their drugs down, goes on vacation, just says, I'm not going to use, tolerance lowers as quick as 72 hours. And then what happens is people don't realize that their tolerance is low, and they'll take usually the same amount that they use before they stop. And they can stop for a gazillion reasons. And that causes an overdose. They don't realize how much they're using. The body can't sustain that much. And like we said, there's fentanyl in everything. If a person has had 2 to 3 non-fatal overdoses in the past, that raises their risk of their next overdose being fatal. So, signs of an overdose. If you come across someone who's unconscious, you go hello, 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 and they're unresponsive to outside stimuli, I'm getting my Narcan hit and I'm saying it's an overdose. It could be a heart attack, it could be anything. But where I'm coming from, it's an overdose because Narcan, we talked about, can't hurt you. So if you come across someone and they had a heart attack, you don't know, you give them Narcan, you can't hurt them.
It won't help, but it won't hurt. So you don't have to worry what they take, what did they use. You could just give them the Narcan and you will not hurt anyone. If they see the sternum, if you're not sure that they're not reacting to you going, hello, 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 shaking them, if you take your knuckles and you right here, press it right here, it's a sternal grind, sternal bone, it's painful. Anything other than unconscious, they're gonna move, they're gonna have some movement because it's painful. So if you come across someone and they're unconscious, you don't believe it maybe, and you give them the sternal grind, no response, it's probably overdue. If their breathing is slow, shallow, erratic, I'm going to be overdue. I guess that's just how I'm finding right now. Also, the choking or gurgling sound or gasping sound, deep snoring. So if you know someone is active, see, I was training the RAs, resident assistants at Sarah Lawrence College, and I'm giving them all Narcan. And I told the RAs, if you go into someone's room and you hear them snoring, don't just assume it's a sound sleep. You can't assume this anymore. Go in and shake them and wake them up. If they get annoyed, okay, tough. But you have to go in and be proactive. You gotta shake them because that's a real telltale sign. If there's a deep snoring, if their arms are limp, and if their skin, as he said before, is cold or clammy, or blue or purple tinge to the nails or the lips. Now, someone asked me when I was training, do you have to go through all of these before you give Narcan? My answer is no. You come across someone who's unconscious, I'm giving them the Narcan. Just giving.
Well, it only takes a minute or less to go through all these.
Right. So, what?
How much time are you dealing with?
Yeah,
You
30
gotta
seconds
put it
you
to a
can go
victim.
Right, that's right.
How much time do you have to?
You want to give it to them as soon as possible, right? But people don't, they don't know. So they want to know if you have to go through all of these, after all these signs. As far as I'm concerned, the person, you're unconscious, you have to know the person. So I have time to tell one quick story. I was in Eastchester and they were doing this. They do this young thing and they have people come and speak and the whole town was there. It was a little hot out. And all of a sudden a young kid, he drops. And I was like, who has Narcan? Because in my head, it's an overdose. Well, his parents looked at me. The police rushed to him. The EMTs rushed to him. He fainted. Maybe he didn't have enough to eat. But my reaction was, I started screaming, get the Narcan, get the Narcan. But you know what? Get the Narcan. Next, please. So how does naloxone work? Can you go one more, just quickly for 1 second? When the opiates hit on the receptors in the brain, when you give Narcan, it knocks them off and it cracks the receptors. It only stays on 30 to 90 minutes. And we don't know who's 30 and who's 90 and everything in between. And then after the time when it decides to come off the Narcan, it comes off. And then opiates floating around and go back on top. You want to go back to the start?
Does that mean you might have to give it more than once?
1 second. When you give someone naloxone, we talk about the steps and how you do it. Within 2 to 3 minutes, there should be some sort of reaction. Something. That's how fast it works. Now, when we talk about fentanyl, one kick, which has 2 of these, might not work because fentanyl is stronger than heroin opiates, right? So these 2, that's why when we talk about the steps, we call 911 first. Also, naloxone can cause withdrawals. They're uncomfortable, but they're not life-threatening, and the person can't die from it. They'll just be annoyed because remember, they were getting high and feeling good. Next thing, they're on the floor with people probably looking over them saying, you overdosed. But I want you to know that you just give them the Narcan. It won't hurt them. Next. Okay, so the action steps, what do? You come across someone, hello, immediately call 911. and then you get your Narcan. So what you do is you tilt the person, go to the next, thank you. What you do is you get the Narcan, take it out of this little pouch, it's just like a nasal spray. And all you do is you tilt the person's head back and you do this. That's it.
Up their nose.
Up their nose. You put the plunger right up their nose and you press it. Don't test it first. Don't see how much is in it. Just put it right up against their nose and spray it because that's all you've got. And then you put them in the recovery position. Because when someone is in overdosing, it also relaxes their gag reflexes, so they won't be able to gag because the naloxone causes withdrawals, and one of the parts of withdrawal is throwing up. So if they're on their back, they can choke. We put them in the recovery position. Next question. Could you go to the slide before? This works within 2 to 3 minutes. If you get no response within 3 minutes, you take out the second pack, they're on their side, you put them on their back, you tilt their head, and you use the other pack, put the nostril right up their nose, the nostril, and spray it, put them back into the recovery position. The other nostril, use the other nostril, yes.
What if the person isn't overdosing and someone thinks they are and they do that? What does the person experience if they go through?
Withdrawals.
No, they're not.
No,
they're
just
not-
a regular person that,
Oh, nothing.
and say you make,
Nothing.
it doesn't
Well,
do
nothing,
anything.
Nothing at all, sorry. We do absolutely nothing. That's why I say you can't go wrong with uses. You don't have to worry. Just give it to a person, but you can start their breathing.
Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
Because that must be the longest 2 to 3 minutes ever.
Yeah.
I mean, you're doing this, now the person's still unresponsive,
Right.
and then you're going, oh my God, I gotta wait till. What if they had a heart attack and really need CPR?
Okay.
Too bad.
I don't know. You have to call 911.
I know, with 911, they take 10 minutes to get there.
If you know CPR and you're certified and you know it, that's up to you. Would I do mouth to mouth on a stranger? No. Because A, you don't know nowadays, COVID, and also fentanyl is so strong that if I give mouth to mouth to someone and they've got fentanyl in the system and I breathe and then inhale, I can overdose.
Mhm.
So the best thing might be chest
Chest
compressions.
compression.
Chest compressions if you know how. That's why I don't really talk about that, because I don't know how 100%. Yes.
The person who overdosed, how much time is there as they become non-responsive before
They die?
Narcan will be active? Is it 10 minutes, a half hour?
So you're saying, but the person, I come across someone's unconscious, I give them the Narcan, how, no?
So you come across someone who's unconscious, EMT doesn't know if it's fentanyl, they do whatever they would normally do, and then you use the Narcan. Is there like a time frame that Narcan will bring someone back? Like, is it 10 minutes, a half hour, an hour?
They should feel the naloxone, Narcan, within 2 to 3 minutes.
How long can they be in the overdose state?
Oh, it all depends. See, overdose on heroin, someone could go 2 to 3 hours. But from the time they take the drug and then it's an overdose, they become unconscious, that someone gets to them, could be 2 to 3 hours.
But then you're looking at brain damage, you're starving the brain block. If somebody's not breathing that long, it's, it's a serious situation.
But if someone was unconscious for an hour and Narcan,
Would it help?
would it?
It should help, absolutely.
But how are you gonna know if they're unconscious for an hour? That's the whole thing. You come upon someone, you don't know how long they've been
Yeah, if they're
unconscious.
all gray, it's probably.
Or if you go in your son's bedroom and he's unconscious, and he's snoring or gurgling, and you just use it.
Right. Just use it.
Yeah, you have to, because you don't, no one's never, unless you see the person taking the drug, you're not gonna see that they have an overdose.
But that's a good question. Narcan works. No matter when you give it, it should work, except if they passed on, or they've used fentanyl and we don't know, and the two might not work. But just give it. Does that answer your question? You kind of sort of, so let's try it again.
No,
Sure? Okay.
I've recently lost
I'm sorry.
someone, and there was questions that Narcan wasn't used, or was it used? Did they do any mouth to mouth? Was there evidence there? And he died. And so I'm trying to put a few, besides phone calls and text messages that nobody answered, to then have someone go in and find him, then what transpired. But I was wondering if there's a time frame that would work. Like, can you be unconscious for 2 hours and then Narcan could work?
Maybe.
And they have to still be breathing.
They have to be breathing.
Right.
Right.
They're not breathing.
Some of those answers I don't have quite yet.
Right. Right, and I'm sorry.
So,
Do not wait more than 5 minutes to give the next dose. The first dose should have a reaction 2 to 3 minutes. If not, move them back, tilt their head, put the second spray up the other nostril, but don't wait more than 5 minutes. It only works if the person has opiates. If you come across someone who's unconscious, you don't know, just give them one. You don't have to wait to figure out what they use. Like I said, it will only work if there are opiates present. Next. So this is the picture. The steps. Next. The Good Samaritan law. If you don't know it, you have college kids, young kids, you should tell them about the Good Samaritan law. Good Samaritan law protects all of us. So if I'm with someone and they overdose, I call 911 and I get them help, I won't be held liable. Kids that are underage drinking, if someone is sick and they call in the ambulance, the police, they won't be charged with anything. If your people are getting high and someone overdoses, they call the police, but they've got narcotics. If it's less than 8 ounces, you won't be prosecuted because you called for help. If you're sharing drugs or possessing paraphernalia, you will be arrested. So this is something that you tell your college age kids, your young kids, and some adults don't know. Call 911. Next, the Good Samaritan law will not protect you if you have more than 8 ounces of a controlled substance, sale or intent to sell a controlled substance, open warrants for your arrest, or violation of probation or parole. You will not be protected.
I think it begs to be said that, 8 ounces of powder is like you're dealing drugs. That's a lot of drugs.
What does that translate into, like say, oxycodone or hydrocodone
Okay, can I
pills?
answer? You have the glass measuring cups. Everyone has one. Glass measuring cups, the writing on it, red writing. You see the line, the 8 ounce line? Anything below that 8 ounce line. So you can have that thing filled, a lot of pills. How many? A lot of pills. As long as it's under that 8 ounce line, you're free and clear. It can be filled with 10. As long as it's below that 8 ounce. It's a lot of drugs. It's a lot of drugs less than 8 ounces. Next.
Sure, that's not 8 ounces of gas.
8 ounces, that's what it says, 8 ounces.
8 ounces of gas. Whether 8 ounces of fluid or there's 8 ounces of weight, which is that?
I will have to look that up.
I would guess it could be, I would guess
It should be weight, so it's not, I don't think it's.
Well, I'm using the measuring cup as a visual.
Anyway.
So that people get an idea of what that looks like. But I'll have to look that up, because I want to know for sure. Thank you. So you keep the Loxone in the original package, you can take it out of the box, and you can just, that's kind of bulky, so if you're gonna carry it with you, take it out of the box and put the 2 in, and then carry it like that. It has to avoid exposure to extreme temperature. So don't put it in the dashboard of the car, and don't put it in the glove car. Heat or cold, extreme hot or cold. You want to have it easy access. And you know, a lot of people that I train, they say, well, I don't know if I'm really gonna need it or use it or what, because we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. You don't know your friends, your college age friends, you know, kids, they come over, we don't know, so you have it. And you let your family know that just in case you need it, this is where it is. And if you need it, that's my phone number, you wanna write it down, or my cards. If you need more, you use it, just call me, and I'll get you an indication. And also, we have, which we should send out to, Howard, we could send to you a flyer of when we have Narcan trainings on Zoom. And then we'll mail you the Narcan. Next. So why do we do this? And why we're so glad that you're here? To the world, you may be one person, but to one person, you may be the world. I think that sums it up. Sue, Stephen, myself, Harold, Christian, said, everyone else who comes out to be trained, you could be the world to one person. So that's why I'm glad that you stayed. Thank you. Next. And these are resources. As Susan said, we're family support navigators. We work with families who have someone who's using, a friend, family, anyone. Questions, help you navigate treatment, whatever you need, you can call us. Here's our phone number and our email. That's the training.
Thank you.
Thank you.